healthcare. Geeta is here online as well. Thank you, Geeta, for this wonderful ongoing collaboration. I am filling in for Ronelle today, who, as we speak, is graduating. So I'm sure you will all join me in congratulating her on her achievement and wishing her every success. So today's session is Mastering the Interview Part 2, which builds on Part 1 held on the 14th of March. So please allow me to welcome our facilitator for this afternoon session, Mr. Landry Mutombo. This is his second session. I believe he facilitated the time management session held in March as well. So for those of you who don't know, just a quick bio on Mr. Mutombo. Mr. Mutombo is the Chief Executive of Inspired Recruitment Solutions and has more than 10 years of recruitment and leadership experience backed by an MBA. He is passionate about helping people and has a keen interest in productivity improvement. So I invite you all to actively participate in the session and make it interesting. I'm sure Landry will as well. My colleagues Felicia will be monitoring the chats for your comments and questions. So without further delay, I hand you over to Landry. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me back. I do appreciate it. Thanks to Geeta for graciously allowing me to facilitate the session. To my team at Inspired, as well as the DUT team, I really appreciate the privilege of speaking to you about this. I just want to make a quick note. I'm going to turn my video off because I don't want any strain on the bandwidth. And also, if there is an outage, it will simply take a bit of time for a generator to kick in, and we should be able to continue. So on that note, I'm going to begin. I want to ask you a quick question as we start. What percentage of interview success do you think is down to preparation itself? What would you say? Is it below 50%? Is it more than 50%? You really need to think about this. I'd like to think it's a lot. It's around 50% or more, but this is something you have to think about. The interview is probably the most critical part of your job search process and our hiring process. So if you have time in the chat, give me your number, how much you think the interview is based on your previous experience, your CV, and the success of your interview. How much is that based on preparation? I'd like to get back to that a little bit later. Let's move forward. What I said earlier about the interview being a critical part of the recruitment process for us employers and agencies as well as yourself is because it's the ultimate signal. For us, we have something at Inspired where we measure our performance, and a lot of the measuring of our performance is based on the interview itself. If you look at the scorecard, for instance, as a recruitment agency, if we send out CVs to a client, so we send CVs to Landry and Landry interviews, the minute Landry receives the CVs, we consider the process of the hiring of the candidate at 25%. Once they've been past that process, we think that they have a probability of getting the job at 50%. But let's just think about that, right? Think about how much has to happen before you secure your interview. You're sending a CV, you're going through applicant tracking systems, you're navigating bots and people screening your profile. But then what's happened is that somebody out there has decided this profile is good enough for me to take time to interview. And we believe at that point, I believe at that point, that you've already done 50% of the potential job of actually landing the opportunity, which makes the interview so much more critical. Obviously, on our end, once you've gone through the interview processes, we would say your checks and negotiations and offer means we're 75% of the way there. And obviously, once everything's signed, you're 100% of the way there. I wanted to show you and share some global stats with you. We see this in our organization as well. Only 2% of applicants get interviews, and that makes sense. We get a lot of applications, and I think I touched on this a little bit when we spoke about time management, right? The other thing you need to think about as to why interviews are the ultimate signal is that a lot of the decisions are just made in 10 minutes or in a very short span of time. In fact, some of our early technologies at Inspired were built around helping clients to make a decision very, very quickly and using technology to manage that process. But you got to think about that. And then last stat I wanted to throw at you was that you're 25% more likely to be hired if you send a thank you email. I'm going to tell you a story about this that happened to me just 2 weeks ago with a candidate I interviewed. For now, let's move forward. As I mentioned earlier, if you've been invited to an interview, a lot of things would have had to have happened first. Think about
Sorry, colleagues. I believe Landry might be having some trouble. You can give him a few minutes.
He mentioned that if there is
Yes.
an outage, he'll connect on a generator shortly. He's
Yeah.
actually in Kinshasa at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right. We'll give him a few moments.
thank you. Maybe while he's connecting, maybe I'll just confirm, because we both run different recruitment agencies, and his stats are quite right. They are even in my own business, the percentage rate of interviews of submitted candidates to clients is about between that 2 and 5%. And that is purely based on what the client or the company saw in that CV. So when Landry says that the interview is really critical, it's not just because there's such a small percentage from that get interviewed. Is that 2% is actually quite a lot when you consider that 2% of people are your competition. So even when there's 20 candidates being interviewed, there's very often at least 3, 4, 5 of those in the running for a second interview. And winging it these days absolutely is not the way to go. The candidates that win it, or not win it, wing it, who go unprepared, who have not put in the time to really be able to articulate their value proposition, are more unlikely by about, I think it was, if I looked the last time, about 69% more unlikely to get through that interview process. So it's absolutely, if you are thinking that checking a website and reading the job, having a quick look at the job spec is sufficient, It absolutely isn't. It's, in fact, that's probably going to get you in the very, very bottom quartile of your benefit or your possibility of being interviewed at, or of going through that first round interview, potentially to the second round interview. So yeah, absolutely critical. And I know I've seen Landry's presentations, so I know that he's not going to cover it in a lot of detail. So maybe while we're waiting for him, I will. The amount of research you do, there's always more than you think there is out there. So even if the recruiter or the hiring manager just gave you the company's website and a job spec, there's still a huge amount of data that you can gather. So as an example, you could go on social media, because social media is unlikely to give you company stats and values and product names. It's more likely going to give you things like culture fit, the CSI initiatives that they get involved in. Are you back, Landry?
I'm here, Gita. I hope you can hear me.
Okay. All right.
My apologies, we just went down and I needed to, our generator just kicked in, so my apologies for that, guys. Gita, you can continue while I access my camera and share again.
Okay, I'm just going to finish the sentence. I was just talking about how much data is available to people when they're preparing for an interview. So social media sites give you a lot of insight to culture fit, their CSI initiatives, how they practically live their values. You could look at audited financials. You could tap into your LinkedIn networks. You could go and have a look at employees that work there, the actual interviewers you've got. You could go and look at articles in the news. You could go and look at related industries and competitors of that client to give you a bigger or a much broader landscape of where this company operates and in which areas they play, which could be very insightful for an interview. Righty.
Thanks, Gita. I seem to have lost my ability to share. I don't know if one of the administrators could repair that so I can regain my ability to share my screen, if that's okay. I don't know if any changes were made.
Swelishli, would you be able to assist?
Yes, if you could just send me his presentation, then I'll share it on my side, please.
Okay. All right. Jamina, if you wouldn't mind, again, guys, my apologies. These technical issues really will be the end of me. So sorry, guys. Who do I can simply send the link. Who do I send the link to my presentation to?
You'll send it to swelihle@DUT. I'll text my email in the chat box.
All right, I'll send it shortly.
Thank you. Landry, I'm not sure if you want to take any questions or look at the chat in terms of the percentage you asked about while we're waiting, or if there's anything that participants want to ask for the few moments of information that was shared.
Absolutely, that's a great point. I'm looking at the chat now, and I've seen above 50%. I'm seeing about 70%, 80%, and above 60%. So I think we're all aligned in terms of probability and how much weight our interview has when we're going through it. And so I think that if anything, this simply highlights more what what you should be doing and how important it is to prepare for your interview. I'm happy to take questions, guys. Please be free to shoot them at us now while we have our presentation up and running. I see a question from B. Molokwane. Please go ahead. And from N. Ngumane.
Good day, sir. Good day. Thank you so much for this session. We are indeed gonna learn a lot. So I wanted to ask regarding interview questions. When the interviewer asks the candidate if they have any questions, and it happens that the interviewee doesn't have any question, does that give as a red flag, or does it give maybe there's a certain point that the candidate might lose? Because honestly, sometimes you just don't have any questions to ask or any feedback or any follow-up. You just had everything cleared up during the interview. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you so much. Let me get Ken Gubane's question, and then we'll go back to that very important question of questions.
Hey, Ngubane, can go ahead.
Okay. Maybe let's answer that when Kay Ngubane comes back. We will move forward from there. So my answer to that is that you must have questions for your interviewer. You know, there's a slide in my deck that I'll share with you shortly that says, you know, at least we perceive that smart people ask smart questions. So there has to be a question that you've prepared. In fact, you should prepare quite a bit of questions, and through your interview process itself and actually going through the interview, I think you will have some questions, and a lot of the times the questions you ask will tell us a lot about how prepared you are for the interview, and so on. I can tell you, I've recently interviewed for an intern in our office, and I was extremely disappointed with the ones that didn't ask me questions. And I think some of it might have felt as though it was a lack of preparation or a lack of engagement. But certainly I felt it when some of the guys were like, "I've got no questions for you." Like, okay, well, you know, we've just spent an hour talking. How is it that there's nothing you want to know? Because, you know, another part of my slide that I was going to touch on is that, you know, Molokwane, you're about to spend a lot of time with that employer. You're going to spend hours and hours a day with them. I think it's important that you get everything out of your system, because again, an interview is a two-way street. It's not a one-way thing. So I hope I've answered that. And I'm going to share with you some really smart questions that you can ask. So it doesn't have to be, hey, what are your working hours? No. A great question is, what does success look like in this position? That's a great question to ask, because now the manager has to think, or some questions I've had is, okay, well, in a year's time, what would have told you that I had a good performance over the last 12 months or a bad one? Because that uncovers so much. And if you ask an open-ended question, you're likely to really get some good feedback from the person interviewing, and it might give you some real insight into the company. So I hope that clears that, and I will get into it a little bit later. Ken Ngubane, you can go ahead if you're there, and I had a Kay Kwabe as well that had a hand up. Still nothing there.
Yeah, Landry, there is a question on the chat from Siphumelele Ndewonde. And the question is, can I please ask about the assessment test we now have to write before being admitted to interview? What to prepare as an individual with no experience as an intern?
A great question again. What you have to remember is employers, get a lot of requests and a lot of applications. We said that 2% of people are going through to interviews. What you have to remember is that when a company or an employer or an HR division is flooded with applicants, we're going to use techniques of essentially refining and filtering our search. And assessments are only just another filter. In fact, it's one of the filters that companies trust extensively. Companies really, really want to use, and they're going to use more and more and more assessments. What I suggest you do is you become really, really good at getting through assessments, and you're going to have to get used to it. Some of this research that we did 2 years ago around what tools employers trust the most, certainly into assessments are one of them, because a company wants to make sure that the person they're onboarding is really able to do the job, and assessment sometimes can show us skill other than just an interview. I see more questions. Should I carry on with my presentation and then we can get back to questions, or should we take all the questions we have now? Could you give me some guidance there, please?
You can advise Landry whether you'd want to go through these questions. We have Kengobani's question as well.
All right, I'll take Kengobani's question, and everything else we can take afterwards, because I think that my presentation is going to touch on a lot of this.
Sure. Okay. So Kengobani's question is, what makes companies to do 4 or 5 interviews before they can hire you?
Another great question. 5 interviews is excessive. Even when we're talking to our clients, we try to get them to not have excessive rounds of interviews, especially for junior positions. I think let me maybe set the scene. Recruiting somebody into a company, especially in a senior position, is one of the most critical decisions that a company makes. It really is. If you get a hire wrong, it costs you a lot, and it's tough to manage an employee who's not a good fit. It puts a lot of strain on the business and the individual. So companies want to make sure that they're getting the right person in. However, sometimes they can go a step too far in trying to assess and have every person in the company with a decision to make interview. The other thing that I've seen happen is that sometimes in management teams there are internal politics, and I could be vouching for a specific candidate, but somebody who I don't really see eye to eye with in the company has an eye on another candidate, and so our candidates start getting bounced from manager to manager because there's some internal politics. So we try to limit that to 3 at most, and I think for a junior hire it should be even less. So some companies do, and we can't really change that because it's their internal processes. You just have to prepare and be ready for the next hire and the next hire. All right. I think let's move on to the presentation. If we can move on to the next slide, because again, I have no control over my presentation because I'm not presenter at the moment. If we could just move forward there. All right. I think this is where you lost me. What I wanted to say here is that, companies want to hire. Open vacancies are not good. And a lot of the time the recruitment process can be painful. I personally get really, really frustrated because you interview a lot of candidates. You're assessing, you're getting feedback, and you could have 10 interviews and not find the suitable candidate. So if you think about how painful that process is, it means that employers want to hire. And so if we've gone through the process of screening your application and you're suitable, and we've already agreed in the chat that we're above 50% in our probability of landing the job, then great. Now it's just about making it count. Let's move on to the next one. I want to talk to you about mindset. Anytime I'm talking around recruitment, I really want you to think about your state of mind when you approach anything job related. First thing you have to remember is that good mental health is critical to most success, and certainly interview success. So you have to get your mind right. There's a quote that by John C. Maxwell that says, you know, somebody, somebody might succeed if nobody believes in them and they believe in themselves. But it's impossible for somebody to succeed who doesn't believe in themselves. And there's a bit of a dichotomy here when it comes to job searches, because a lot of the time, if you're searching for a job for a long time, you can feel beaten and downtrodden. The problem is if you let that affect you and walk into an interview with that state of mind, it's going to hurt you. All right. So that aspect of your mindset, make sure you're around people with a positive mindset who are in your corner and trying to help you land that job. However, confidence is it's not a feeling, it's a skill. You have to be, you have to practice, right? You have to be skilled and don't wing it, right? I'm the chief winger, and that's why I'm constantly trying to make sure I'm well prepared. Because if you're not well prepared and you're not practicing, then, in essence, you're going to stumble. It will not go well. It never does, right? So you've got to be prepared, and you have to show up like you belong. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit more. Let's move forward. We touched on this a little bit, some aspects of my notes. But before you go into any interview, and we're going to talk a little bit about preparation, and again, if we go back to the thinking that our interview we're very close to that job, then what we do in this interview is really going to make the difference or not. And what does that mean? It means that from the time you walk through my door, I'm already asking myself whether this is the person I've been looking for. So before the interview, what you want to do is you want to know the company. And guys, this is very, very critical. A lot of people don't do this. Read the About Us page. What is this company about? A lot of companies have their values on their website. I think Gita was talking about that earlier. Not just so you're prepared in the interview, but again, you're going to spend a lot of time with your employer. Is it worth it joining a company that maybe doesn't have the values that you have? And we find this a lot where our desperation to get into a job, we take anything we're not necessarily aligned with how the company is operating or what its core values are, and then we become frustrated. I always ask my candidates, are you actually, you can find a job, but you have to think about whether this environment is for you and the way that we run our business, the way we do things. Is this something you want to do? You've got to know that, right? So you got to know the company. And when you go into an interview, you've got to know more. You've got to know more than just what the address is and so on. And you've got to have a clear idea. The other thing you want to do is, and I think Gita touched on this as well, check out your interviewers on LinkedIn. It's a great thing. I try, even when I go into business meetings, I hardly go into a meeting without having a look at somebody's LinkedIn profile. It tells you a lot. You know that if this person has a certain qualification or certain experience, the post that they put out, it'll give you an idea who are you meeting. Before you walk through the door, you can see their face. It does help to prepare somewhat. Read the job spec thoroughly. You want to know that, what they're asking of you, you're able to do. And a lot of the time, companies are putting together generic job specs. The job specs themselves are not, they're not really what the person will be doing. And another great question from what we spoke about was, could be, okay, I've seen your job spec, but could you talk me through what the average day looks like in this position? And sometimes it's not even aligned to the job spec. And if you know that clearly, it's something you can navigate. We're going to talk about storytelling and values. One thing I find is really, really good is if you see values on a company's website that they strive to uphold or that they live by, If you can match one of your personal value stories to that, then it'll really put you in good stead. Give you a quick example. I see that passion is one of Inspired's core values because your motto is life's too short to not love what you do. Well, I love recruitment. And I think that I'm really passionate about what I do. And therefore, there's some real alignment between us in that sense. You're talking about their values. You're talking about how it aligns to you. And in that very moment, you are aligning yourself and letting them know that you know quite a bit about them. Dress for where you're going. Your outfit matters. I know when I interview younger people, there is a dependence on, we're very liberal in how we appear and all of those good things, and that's fine. But if I'm the CEO of the Inspired Group and I'm walking in to interview an intern or a junior person in my business and I'm overdressed compared to them, it makes me uncomfortable. Let me explain. I don't expect you to be in a suit, but wear a shirt. If you have a jacket, put it over. Wear pants and shoes. It's really, really important. It tells, I know a lot of people don't like ties and all of the formalities, but try to have some professional wear. This is really, really important, and try to cover your shoulders. For women, and I never advise women on how to dress, but you've got to try and dress professionally and be careful of how you put yourself out there and how you might be perceived, especially by male interviewers, right? You've got to really be careful of some of those cues. It's not a guessing game, it's a preparation game. And we've touched on that. And I think that's going to be the theme going forward. Let's go to the next slide. And there was a video that I wanted to play for you. I'm not sure it's going to play through this format, but let's try anyway, if we're able to. And if not, we can move past it and I'll explain to you what we do in this sense. If you don't mind, let's move forward. Guys, are we there? Okay, so we didn't get the video, but maybe we can touch on it. We can touch on it here. What I find is that we are not communicating properly. Guys, your ability to communicate is going to make your life easier. I cannot imagine how frustrating it might be for us as humans when we can't express how we feel. So we go through life where you're thinking something or feeling something, but you can't clearly articulate it. And again, this is something we don't practice. What you have to do is you may have to do some mock interviews, right? Before I go into the slide. And the video I was going to share with you was a technique to improve your ability to communicate or to speak to other people, right? And what this person was saying was an internationally renowned speaker. His name is Vin. I don't know if you guys know him, but he basically says, record yourself. Get a friend to record you while you say something for a few minutes, a 5-minute talk about who you are, your experience, all of those things. And then when you're done recording that, you assess 3 aspects of the recording. You press play, and he says you should rather not review that video immediately. Park it until the next day. When you play it, don't watch the video. Just listen to how you sound. Guys, this is very, very important because when I did this, I started realizing that there are some words I use all the time, and that can be extremely frustrating for somebody listening to us because our vocabulary can be limited. So we use amazing all the time, or oh, great, and so when you listen to yourself play back, you might think, oh, actually, maybe I should be careful what I use. I personally have cut out the word amazing from my vocabulary. If I'm about to say the word amazing, I stop myself and I find something else to use. You can do that. The next thing, turn the volume off and just watch the video because you want to see your hand gestures. Where are your hands? Because we're going to talk about this, but body language matters, right? It's not just about, you know, it's not just about what you say, it's what your body is saying. And a lot of the time your energy people can tell. So if you watch that, you might see some gestures that you do or don't do that might make you think, actually, I need to change this, right? And then after that, you can review the whole thing and make changes as you go along. Now, we practice a lot of skill, but our ability to communicate, we don't practice enough, and this can hurt us in an interview process. Right, first impressions. Again, guys, this is very, very important. And your first impression isn't necessarily when the interviewer walks through the door and shakes your hand. No, it starts in the parking lot. One of my earlier jobs, after I'd gotten the job, I found out that when I came for my interview, the HR guy and the exec for my second interview were watching me from the top balcony drive in. So, you know, they knew my car from the first interview. They saw how I drove in and how I got out of my car and how I walked to the door. What you have to know is that somebody is always watching you. I say to my team that every day is an interview. You can't drop your guard. So from the moment you walk through the door, how are you interacting with the cleaning lady or the security guard or the receptionist? You know, do you treat them badly? Do you simply wait for a person of authority and then treat them well? You've got to think about that because we have close relationships with the people we work with. I may ask, hey, you know, Jamina, what did you think of that candidate? No, you know, that candidate never said a word to me. What does that say about how you interact with people who may not have authority and you may get nothing from? Very, 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 very important, right? And this is all before you've even met with a decision maker, right? How do you walk into that building? How do you greet the receptionist, right? And then from there, you have to know that from the moment somebody walks in, already they're making a judgment on you. We know that people make an opinion of us in 6 seconds of meeting us. And interviewers are humans as well. So we make decisions very, very quickly. And let me explain a trick to you here. Think about it this way. If I'm looking for a receptionist, every candidate I see, I'm asking myself, is this the person that I'm looking for? So I'm trying to match a perception to the individual I'm meeting. If that's the case, you have to try and show me that you're the person I'm looking for, right? So you got to think about that. Make a good impression. Smile, eye contact, energy. This is a no-brainer. Just don't do it excessively. There's a fine balance between being confident, making eye contact, having good energy, and being obnoxious, loud, and unbearable. Right? You got to think about that. You know, we're hiring people, not just we there's a human being that we want to interact with. And again, what I was saying is that you have a situation where I have to work with you for 8 hours of the day, and I want to like you. I don't want to work with people that I don't like. And I think everybody is like that. All right. Every time I talk about this question about tell me about yourself comes up. And I think we may have had some questions in the chat already about this. What's important when I ask a candidate to tell me about themselves? And I want to set the scene first. Let's assume I've interviewed 8 people today. I think you've gone slightly too far. Thanks. Let's say I've interviewed 8 to 10 people today. What is it about you that I'm going to remember? And this is why answering this question, you want to give some background of who you are. And kind of right now, this is where I am. This is what I was, and this is where I'm going. But more importantly, you want to tell a story. When I make my notes after I've interviewed somebody, yes. And the thing is, if I'm looking for a BCom graduate, probably all 8 candidates that I'm looking for have a BCom marketing, right? They have enough experience. It's just maybe the companies that vary or the institution that varies where they've had their qualification. So what is it that I'm going to remember about you? And I want it to be something more than just, oh, the lady in the red jacket. No. When I look at my notes, oh, that's the mother of two. That's the one the gentleman from the Eastern Cape in this part, or that's the musician, the person who does music in their spare time. So you want to leave me with something I can identify you by, so that I don't lose you in my post notes. I'm human too. So you want to stand out, but you want to do it in a classy way. Let's move forward. Let's talk about some tough questions. Why should we hire you? I don't ask this, but I think a lot of companies ask this. In essence, what they're saying is, okay, sell yourself to us, right? I don't really like this line of questioning, but how you want to answer this is in a balanced way. You don't want to be beaten on yourself and saying, well, please just give me a chance, I promise to do good things. You want to say, look, I understand where my limitations are, but this is what I bring to the table, and this is how I can be good for you. You have to know that, right? And you want to communicate it clearly. What's your biggest weakness? Now, a trend that I noticed a couple of years ago, I don't know if it's still the case, when you ask somebody about areas of development, some people use this as an opportunity to say, well, my weakness is that I am a perfectionist. So they're trying to use their weakness to tell you that they're extremely diligent at their job. Don't do that. Be authentic. Even if your response is not great, but I want to know that you're not perfect, and we're going to touch on how to answer this with our STAR technique shortly, but respond with a scenario, right? And I'm already jumping ahead to our STAR technique. But my previous manager has always complained that I did this or I didn't do that. Now, in your mind, you might think, oh, you're really showing some bad signs. And no, you don't want to say, something negative that's going to cost you the opportunity. But it's great for me to know that you actually have the ability to self-reflect, so you can take in feedback from a previous manager. This is great. I personally value people that are self-aware. Same as tell me about a failure. And I'll tell you about some candidates. We've had candidates who come in from the word go and say, you know what, guys, I was fired from my previous job, or I have a criminal record, and this is what happened. And when we share that with clients and managers, it's great, because we're like, you know what? This person made a mistake and they're owning it. It's better than us finding stuff out later when we're doing some digging. So be honest, be authentic, and give balanced responses to this. If there are more questions, we can touch on it later. Let's move forward. In the next, I think let's talk about STAR technique. And what this is, companies will use situational questions, right? These are really effective. So it's not like, okay, what would you do if this? So tell me, can you do this? No, a situational question is, tell me about a time when you had a really tough day at work, and what was it about, right? So what I'm asking you is to tell me a story, and the best way to use this technique, and it works really, really well. And if you take anything out of today, screenshot this, because it's important. The first thing you want to say is set the scene, like what I have a little bit earlier. Well, in my last job, I was working here and here and here. I was asked to do this, that, the other. That's the task. I did this and I missed something, or tell me about a time when you were successful. Or I did it and this is what I did and that was the result. It's extremely powerful way of telling stories. You want to structure your answers into stories. And if you're always referring back to actual experience, employers absolutely love that. So remember that, to tell a story. Let's move forward. I want to touch on virtual interviews, and I'm going to leave plenty of time for us to body language. Okay, let's talk about that. I think that got mixed up in my slides. All right, cool. we spoke about managing and watching your body language, right? Words matter, yeah, but your body speaks louder. Have you know that that meme that says, well, my mouth can be quiet, but it's really my face that's going to say it all, right? I think the ladies use that a lot uh, to just let us know that I might be compliant in terms of verbal, but I want you to know that my face is telling you that I don't approve, right? Body language is absolutely critical. And again, sometimes we're not even conscious of these things. We're simply going through it. And if we don't have a mirror or somebody watching us or somebody seeing how we carry ourselves or how we respond to questions, you want to be careful. This is going to, it might hurt you, right? And the best way to improve how your body communicates is to practice and to have other people hold up a mirror to you if you're not able to hold one up to yourself. So think about that. Sit up, be still, nod, show presence. On this, I want to touch on, and I had moved the slide slightly because I wanted to talk about it around first impressions, but we'll cover it anyway. Things like where you sit in an interview room, right? I have a few things that I do. When you walk into a company, whether it's for a meeting or an interview, you want to be intentional. You want to be real clear in your communication. I'm Landry. I'm from Inspired Recruitment. I'm here to see Geeta today. Very simple. If I'm asked to sit, I will sit. If I'm asked for something to drink, water is always safer than a warm beverage. Why? A lot of companies will simply bring you a glass and you can drink at your own leisure. If you're asking for a cup of coffee, do you take milk? Do you take sugar? It's got to be made. It's likely going to come in during your interview or later on. You've got to carry it. Try not to complicate things when you're in an interview. Just ask for some water. That will help. All right. So the other thing is you want to shake firmly. None of the two-finger handshaking. Open palm, really grab the person's hand. And you don't want to break their arm off, but you also don't want to give them a baby shake. You want to give them a firm handshake because it says, yes, I'm not afraid to be here and I'm ready to go. All right. When I'm asked to sit in an office and wait for the interviewer to come in or the meeting person, I don't sit with my back to any door. Remember that. Because again, you don't want to be taken by surprise. Wherever you sit, make sure you have line of sight to whoever might be coming towards you. Rather than somebody tapping you on the shoulders and now you have to turn around, rather you want to see them coming from a couple of meters away and you're prepared, you stand up and you can greet them. The other thing is don't shake hands while sitting down. These are some basic things, but you need to think about it. Whenever you shake hands with somebody, you want to stand up, look them in the eye and shake their hand. Never shake sitting. You don't want to, I wrote down here, don't be silly. So, don't walk in eating or chewing gum or anything that might be seen to be unprofessional, right? During the interview, you want to sit up. So don't recline in your chair. You want to be still. You want to respond with your body. So nodding and showing some response that you're there and showing presence. What can be difficult is keeping eye contact in a room of multiple interviewers. So what you want to do in that case is you don't want to wander your eyesight, especially when, let's say, there are 3 people interviewing you. You don't want to be looking everywhere. You want to keep your eye on the person who's asked you the question and occasionally look to the others and nod and let them know that you acknowledge they're still there. You don't want to ignore anybody in the room, but you also don't want to be wandering your eyes everywhere. You respond lengthily to one and you look at the other and you move on from there. The other thing you want to do, and I think we spoke about this in a previous session, is remember names. Very, 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 very important. If you go back to the questions that were asked, every time I answered a question, I mentioned the person's name who had asked the question. Why? Scientists will tell you that when we hear our name said back to us, it makes us feel better and our defenses are down. So when you're meeting people for the first time for an interview, make sure you remember their names, right? Because if you're answering a question in an interview and saying, you know, Geeta, that was a great question. And you know, every time you're responding, you're saying, Jamina, that was a great question. Let me respond to it. They're like, yeah, wow, this person actually remembered my name. They know who I am. Whereas if you don't take in their name, and you've got to be conscious of this because you're going to be nervous and things might be moving quickly, especially if there's more than one person interviewing you, you might lose that and it might hurt you in terms of your body language. So if there are more questions, we can take that later. Let's move forward. Virtual interviews. I want to share a rule that I have personally with you. I want to share this rule with you. In most things, how I like to interact, especially in this modern day of so much technology, I always seek human contact first. So virtual interviews should not be first choice. So if a company asks you, you know, there's an option, you can come to our office or, you know, we'll do a virtual or a Teams meeting. Unless it's, you know, impossible for you to travel, rather go there. So if it's in another province, so it just doesn't make sense to move, to travel for the interview, then do a virtual. But always seek human contact first. I'm never going to perceive you as well over a virtual meeting as I am in person. I can't sense your energy. Even when we sell to clients and when we interact with humans, a human connection is going to become more and more and more critical, and you want to leverage on that. So in person first. However, if you're going to do a virtual meeting, make sure your camera is right. The amount of times we literally dial in to candidates before they go into interviews because we want to say to them, let me see your camera. You know, is it at eye level? What's your background look like, right? You may have to tell your family to go away and lock yourself in a room, or you know, go use an office somewhere and lock yourself away. Make sure your background is clear. Put a background photo if you want. If you're going to use a phone, make sure you're not holding it in your hand because it's very shaky. You want to set it down ahead of time against something where it looks great, and you want to test it. You want to make a call or two before and say, hey, how do I look? Right? If you're just going to dial in then and there, you don't want something silly like a shaky camera or a bad background to affect how you're perceived by an interview. So that's important. Clean, quiet space is pretty standard. You want to check mic and lighting. And those of us who are darker skinned, you've got to think about this. And I'll share with you guys a study I read around how cameras and the perception of light on darker faces affects how much people trust them. I'm of darker skin, so I have to be very, very careful of my lighting because if people can't clearly see your facial expressions, it lowers their ability to trust you. It's a real thing, guys. I promise you. I'll happily share that information. In fact, you know, so you've got to make sure that you're clearly visible. There's good lighting, your mic is good, and you sound good. And all of this will only happen if you are testing and making sure that what you're getting, you'll be able to move forward. All right, cool. Let's go to the next one. We can wrap up in 5 and then take questions. Ask questions. I already spoke about the first one earlier. What does success look like in this position? How is feedback given? Right? What are the next steps? I told you about some intern interviews I was doing 2 weeks ago. And I guarantee you that some candidates who weren't even my top candidates, based on the questions they asked me, I started questioning whether or not they might be the right person, right? What are the next steps? How? And again, what you want to do here is the other types of questions you can ask is the kind of questions that lets your potential your interviewer know that you've done your research. Quick example. Like I mentioned earlier, I see that you, a couple of years ago, you had this issue in the news or whatever it is. I'd be interested to know how you felt at the time when this happened. Tells me that, like Geeta said earlier, you have your eye on current affairs, you know what's going on, and you're happy to ask those questions, or how it pertains to you. Right? These are things you want to ask. How is feedback given? It's a great question. I might, and that was the one where I was saying, well, in a year's time, what is going to tell you that I've done well or poorly in this position? What are next steps? Same question that was asked earlier in the chat. Are you going to interview me 10 times? How many people am I going to go through? Are there assessments later? What are the next steps? How do we move forward? Smart people ask smart questions, and I maybe put an asterisk there and say people who ask questions are perceived to be smarter. Very, very critical. You must have a long list of questions that you want to ask, and take a notepad into your interview. And if somebody asks you something, you make a note, you say, let me ask about this and clarify that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Let's move on to the next one. Again, you'll be spending a lot of time with this employer. What are some of the red flags you should look out for? Guys, I've worked for some really difficult people, and sometimes I wonder whether I should have saved myself the pain early on by just asking better questions and just listening, where the answer's vague. Are people in and out of this job? They're hiring every single week, and you can ask, well, how long has this position been open? Is it a replacement? What was my predecessor doing? Will they be able to do a handover? No, that person left, or there've been 3 or 4 people in the role. Okay. What would you say has been the challenge in retaining somebody in this position? Because that'll tell you a lot. No growth path, if that's important to you. If this is a dead-end job, then take it as that and make sure that you get in for that period and then get out. Right? You're choosing a workplace as well. Is it really worth it? Do you want to work with these people? You've got to think about that. Because again, the amount of pressure in jobs these days and the mental health strain we take, you want to be quite selective about who you pick as well. It's a two-way street, right? You got to be aware of red flags. Okay, next slide.
Landry, can I jump in there for 1 second,
Yeah,
if you don't mind?
absolutely.
When you're talking about red flags, there was that question earlier about whether is it okay to have 4 or 5 interviews in the process, and you did answer that, and I 100% agree. But in some environments, that in itself could be a red flag, because it might be that there's a whole bunch of politics in the mix, but it also could be that the company's indecisive, that the leadership there's no defined criteria, in which case it could also spell trouble for you. So I'm not saying take it in isolation, but also in some instances you might want to consider that a red flag.
Oh, that's a brilliant addition to this point. Thanks, Geeta. Absolutely. It is a red flag when you're going into a company where they're indecisive. And we as recruiters have this problem with our clients sometimes, where it's just like they'll endlessly interview, and then we ask ourselves, well, are they serious about the recruitment process? And if they're not, then we start thinking, well, maybe they're not a viable client for us. And so for you as well, that's really something to look at. Thanks for that, Geeta. Let's move forward. After the interview, on this, I'll tell you a personal story. Again, I've been looking for an IT intern for a couple of months now to help us. And there was a candidate who on paper wasn't really that strong, although I thought I would see him anyway. He asked such critical questions in his interview, and he sent me the most impactful post-interview email that I'd already made up my mind who was going to hire that day, but I struggled with that candidate because although I knew he didn't really have the skill and the experience that I wanted, another candidate was better, but he made me rethink my decision. And I'll tell you why. He sent me a follow-up email. And it wasn't a generic, thank you for seeing me, I appreciate your time. It was, he literally referenced some of the conversation we had and what he took from the interview. And it's almost like he sent a mini recap of our interview, letting me know that he understood what I said and what I needed, and it was so impactful. I nearly hired him, although he wasn't the strongest candidate of the lot. So our slide initially said you have a 25% better chance of landing the job if you send a follow-up email. I guarantee you, I've personally had that experience, right? You want to send a follow-up email reaffirming your interest and reflect and adjust. And if that's based on something specific in your interview and not generic, it's going to help you a hell of a lot. This is no longer a must, a nice to have. I think you have to put this down as a must do post your interview. Right. The other thing you want to do is if you're not getting feedback, follow up with a phone call. Right? Be persistent and say, you interviewed me 3 weeks ago. I've had no feedback from you. It's very, very important because, again, we get so busy as employers sometimes that things essentially just slip through our minds. So let's move forward. Only a couple of slides left, and then we can get into questions, guys. I'm sure you're burning. Right, we'll run through this quickly. Your success toolkit, you want to prepare, know yourself, know the company, be self-aware, know yourself, what you bring. Communication is critical. You've got to be able to communicate, guys. And again, I'm going to go back to that. Improve your vocabulary, communicate well. It's not about how articulate you are or how well you speak a certain language. It's about how easily you can express yourself to others with understanding. If you're in a position where you can't express to the next person exactly what you're thinking, you are in a weaker position, not just in your employment, but in your life in general. Emotional intelligence is a no-brainer. You want to stay calm when you're challenged. I throw random questions in. I might ask you about something here, and then I'll throw something else that's a complete, curveball because I want to unsettle you a little bit in the interview. You've got to stay calm. Feedback loop, we spoke about that. Next slide, please. It's not a test, it's a conversation. Show them your preparation, bring your presence, speak with purpose. Confidence comes from clarity, go in. There's a quote here that says, it's by Tim Grover, and it says, and I use this a lot, it says, if you're doing the right stuff every day, you're already successful. It's just that the check hasn't come in yet. Your winnings haven't come in yet, but you're already successful if you're doing the right stuff every day. And on this note, what I want to say to you is you want to track your success rate with your interviews as well. How many applications have you done? How did those applications land you? How many interviews? And from those interviews, how many did you crash and burn, or did you just have one smooth process? If you know that, then you can filter and say, okay, well, if I sent this many applications and this is the success that I had, or whatever it is, you can start improving your ratios and if you add statistics and keeping track to your job search process, then all of these things you'll actually get data, not where you sent your CV everywhere, you're called in for an interview, you don't remember where you sent it, and you're all over the place. That's not going to help you have proper information in order to manage your job search, because amongst thousands and thousands and thousands of candidates, you want to stand out. And you're not going to do that without good information and some sort of thinking and record keeping in your job search. And guys, that is all that I've prepared for you today. I think we still have some time. So our next slide is just to say thank you and to share my information with you. You may email me, or if you're looking for work, we're available for you. We can give you guidance. We're always ready to assist candidates. You can call us. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. It's Landry Mutombo, and you can pop me a mail as well. So over to you guys. Let's take some questions, and I'll be happy to dig into some of these things we've spoken about a little bit more.
Thank you so much for that, Landry. Quite a lot of information to take in. And I'm sure, as you said, students, yes, are burning with questions. Before we go to the chat, I think we initially had Francis, whose hand was up. I'm not sure if Francis still has a question. You may go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. May I please know if you guys can assist us with more recruitment agencies, the list, so that we can be able to forward our CVs multiple times? Is it possible?
Nishi, I think that question is probably to you and your team. Obviously, I think Geeta's quite well connected in the recruitment world, and she'd be able to assist, but and would happily be able to share. But I think that might have been a request from you for you, Nishi.
Sure, we can filter out some of the companies and we liaise amongst our colleagues and send it through to you, Francis. That shouldn't be a problem.
Right. Thank you so much.
There are more hands.
Yes, we'll go to P. Shinga. You can go ahead, P. Shinga.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mutombo. Such a wonderful presentation. My quick question is that how important is the institution in which one obtained the qualification?
Great question, P. Shinga. That is an incredible question. Look, from my experience, what is it that's important for me as the employer? That if you've gone through a qualification, that it's taught you the right skill, and you've gone through a program that was relatively rigorous, and you finished it successfully. Now, the real question is, how has the market perceived candidates from that institution? If I know that P. Shinga is from DUT, and the last 5 guys I hired from DUT were highly skilled, and amongst my friends, I said to them, hey, guys, I had these guys from DUT and they're really, really top people, then that reputation helps, right? So it does play a part in terms of credibility and letting me know that you've obtained your qualification at a reputable place, because it means that the quality of your work and your dedication to your craft is going to be good. Having said that, there are also a lot of really bad candidates that come from top institutions. So yes, it plays a part in terms of perception, but I think when it comes to delivering your work and being skilled and being committed to that, that's on you, right? I find that if the qualification is, what I'll generally ask, is it an NQF level 4, 5, 6? As long as I know where that level is and it's accredited, I'm generally comfortable. However, there is an institution where I've hired a few people recently where I've been like, wow, I need to get more people from there. Geeta, do you want to add something there?
Yes, I also want to say that human beings very often live in a world of bias, and sometimes very unintentionally. It's an unconscious bias. And the truth is, you're going to come across environments where they go, oh, the candidate must come from Stellenbosch or Wits. That's an affinity bias that's embedded either in the line manager or the HR. And the truth is, as good as you are, there are times when you'll come up against that, and it's just going to come into play. The honest truth about that is you probably won't even get an interview because they would have seen it on your CV. So you might not even get to this stage. You can't let that hold you back ever. You've got to do your best in whatever institution you're at. And Landry, everything Landry said, I 100% agree with. But just know that sometimes it's not about you. It's not that your tertiary institution was bad. There are people, just like I prefer to go to Checkers instead of Pick and Pay. There's that in the world too, and it's not you at all.
Absolutely.
Thank you. S. Shabalala, can you go ahead? S. Shabalala? Okay, maybe we can move on to B. Malakwane. I know you did ask a question before. I'm not sure if you have something else to ask.
Good afternoon. Yes, I actually do have a question to ask. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. With me, I don't know if it's a question or what, but then how can one showcase their creative skills slash portfolio during the interview, because I was once attended an interview. It was a junior entry level position, and I was told that one of the interviewers actually told me that I sound overqualified because every question that I was asked, I was actually using examples of the bits of experience that I did in previously. So I just wanted to find out, how should I reduce or at the same time show my creative skills, but at the same time not sound too oversharing, or not really oversharing, but too excited. I don't know. Maybe it's because I get too excited or too ambitious. Thank you.
Sure. Another great question, Mulekwane. Look, and again, Gita, maybe you should step in here because I'd like your thoughts as well. I personally would not diminish my skill and ability in order to seem to lower myself, in essence, in an interview. What you don't want to do is you don't want to. You remember I said manage your emotion and emotional. You got to be calm. But if that's your skill level, and that's where you're qualified and you're passionate about what you do, you've got to bring that through in the interview. Because remember, what you also have to think about is if this individual is saying you're overqualified. Again, what Gita said earlier about people and their biases. Sometimes people are just intimidated as well. You're coming in and maybe they're like, wow, this person is really, really skilled, so I need to be cautious. My job might be on the line. But if you diminish yourself and you go into that environment, what does that mean long term? Does that mean you're going to have to keep working as though you're not as good or as as passionate as your job as you are? And you don't really want to set that up front. That I think, be authentic, be yourself. If that's not the opportunity for you, then at least you can move on to the opportunities that are better for you, where you can really express yourself. Gita, I'd like your thoughts on that as well, if you could.
100% agree with absolutely everything you said. The environment may not be for you. It could be indicative of stifling, but everything is exactly that. Bimolekwane, I wanted to just ask, when you're talking about creative stuff or your creative side, are you in a creative space? So are you doing graphic design or multimedia? Can you just tell me what it is that you do?
Maybe I didn't structure my question properly. I'm actually under the HR department.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I agree with that, everything he's saying. But I want to also go back to something Landry said earlier. Body language is so important, your own, but learning to read body language can be equally important, right?
Yeah.
So, sometimes you've got to chalk up an interview to experience and as a learning thing, knowing that, hang on a second, something's just not sitting right with me. You're going to go through the motion. But if you learn to read the room, sometimes that helps almost define what you might say in an interview or how you might say it. Landry 100% earlier mentioned it's not only what you say, it's how you say it. It's how you choose to tell that story. So if you're seeing that the environment or they are unresponsive or oddly responsive to your ability to problem solve and come up with creative solutions, I 100% agree. Don't tone it down for the benefit of somebody else, but maybe just learn to use your words differently. Sometimes in an interview, the person that you're interviewing with is not necessarily your line manager at the end of the day. And you also need the opportunity to leave the space and decide, is this for me or isn't it? But learn to read body language as much as you learn to manage your own, because sometimes that could help you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've got LOBC, and then maybe I can take a couple from the chats. If we can, LOBC.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, there was a point where you spoke about researching the company. I just want to know, what exactly are you researching on the company, and where do you go when you want to get detailed information on the company?
Okay, thanks for that, BC. A lot of companies have an About Us page on their website. That's probably the best place to start. And a lot of companies will have a lot of information there. Their branches, their how they started, when and how, their values. So you want to have a general idea of who the employer is. So that'll give you some information. A simple Google search should really bring up some information on the company, including anything that might have been public in the news or anything like that. So that's probably your place to start. If you're using an agency, then a lot of the time we will have some inside info about how the company operates and who the individuals are and all of that. But for your benefit, start with the About Us page to learn how, their vision, their mission, what do they really believe in, and what are they trying to do? And you'll be able to tell from that if it's a good fit. The other thing you want to do is use LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn is a great tool for this. Not only do you see what the company is posting, you can see the individuals that work there, you can see what they post, and that can really tell you what the company is about, so you can structure your information and your questions around that if need be.
I also think social media is a really good place to go. You can see what kind of employee events get held, what their CSI initiatives are. Go and have a look if there are videos from different people in environments. So are there videos from directors? Are there interviews that they've had in the news? Because very often that can also give you some kind of insight into what working in the organization might be. Landry's 100% correct. LinkedIn is an amazing tool, but don't just look at the interviews. Go and have a look at the employees of those business. What backgrounds did they come from? How long are they staying in that organization? Can you see that they've acquired skills while they've been there? There's so much available. Audited financials, there's tons. Just don't limit yourself. Just find them everywhere and find as much as you can would be my best tip.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Gita. We've got quite a few questions. We're definitely not going to be able to get through all of them today. I'm just going to randomly pick if that's okay. We've got Enrodebe. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I joined late. I was attending a virtual graduation from SAP. Please advise on how one should prepare for an interview if you've been recruited from LinkedIn and they set a virtual interview with you through an email. They only mention that you are wanted for your SAP skills, and that's it. I agreed to attend the interview because I'm looking for a job, but I'm absolutely clueless on how I should prepare, plus nervous.
Wow. So many questions there. I'd like some clarity. So is the concern that the company is not credible, that the information they haven't sent, that they've sent is not necessarily credible, because he's saying, that's all they've sent through, and what they're wanting specifically for SAP skills. So, I mean, it's tough to answer that question. I think what I would do first is to make sure that the company is credible. There's a lot of fraud out there. You got to be careful who it is that's reaching out for you. It's not unusual to be recruited from LinkedIn. A lot of recruiters and companies are using LinkedIn in order to find candidates and connect with them directly. And how to prepare for that interview, really, you may have to just watch this video back and review it when it's up. I think there'd be a lot to go through there. So I'm not sure if there's any more I could give on that, Nishi.
I can add to that maybe.
Sure.
I would always like to say, people want organized people. And if you were in a workspace, I'm sure Landry would agree with me, if you were going to enter into a meeting or anywhere where they would expect somebody to be prepared, You would ask for an agenda. You would ask for something. I honestly don't think you ever need to be afraid of asking the person that sets the interview up for some kind of reference. Is there a job spec? Can you tell me what SAP skills you're particularly interested in? If they're not forthcoming, again, you want to be, like Landry said earlier, making a call about whether that is, one, legitimate, or two, that it is worth your environment. If they can't take the time to give you basic information that says something about them. You could also go on their website and have a look at what SAP skills they are well known for. Not as an example, Accenture are very well known for their SAP implementation skills, but Izazi are very well known for their SAP development skills. Go and have a look at some of the people that work there. What do their profiles say they do? Go and have a look at jobs they may have posted on their LinkedIn or on job boards. It could give you a frame of reference. But the truth is, you're going to be winging it there one way or another. So any prep you do, I would say any prep you do is never a waste. But I would go back and ask for some details before I even attend that. And you can't, and never be afraid to ask. In fact, I love it. Like Landry said earlier, I love it when people ask me questions. I would never expect somebody to come to an interview without anything. But if somebody says to me, I want to know what to expect, I want to see a job spec, and I need to know what industry it's in, I'm like, yes, this person is at least considering things, asking smart questions. Smart people ask smart questions. I love that.
Thank you, Gita. Another question from T. Kaunda. Landry, I want to find out about the questions about weaknesses, because you don't want people remembering your shortcomings and being alarmed. So please make an example on how to tackle this kind of question in a way that cannot shut the opportunities for me. That's from T. Kaunda.
All right, Tikonda, a really good question, and this is tricky. I think what I mentioned here is that people in the past have been saying they've been using a weakness that and that actually points to some of their strengths, right? But remember that we know that you're not perfect. Nobody is. And what you don't want to come across is insincere or not come across as being authentic. So let me give you what I would potentially say is, I think the best thing to do is to refer to what somebody might have said about you. So I would say, the last, and again, you're taking it back to a situational environment and saying, well, let me take you back to my last employment. The last meeting I had, performance-based meeting or one-on-one with my manager, one of the areas he said I should improve on is my delivery on this. He really felt, or she really felt, that these are some of the areas that I could improve on. Some of them I agree, some I don't, but these are the steps that I've taken, and then you end it with some action. So in that sense, you're not maybe beating on yourself. You're saying, well, this is the feedback I've gotten from an authority who's worked with me, provided that information isn't catastrophic to your application. That's what I would use. The feedback from my lecturer is that I can be a little bit overbearing on things, and I sometimes speak too much. I need to really focus on how I respond to tasks and so on and so forth. I think authenticity is more important for me personally than somebody wanting to appear perfect, because then they just come across as inauthentic, and then I can't trust them, and then that lack of trust really would probably be more hurtful to them in an interview. Having said that, you do have to be careful what you share, because some things you share could absolutely cost you. So maybe if you use a situational response, that might be helpful to show that there is somebody else who has a perception over you, and this is the feedback they gave you.
Thank you, Landry.
Sorry, can I add to that quickly?
Sure.
If you're particularly unsure and you're not quite sure how to tell the story without it coming across as something not great, this stage of your careers, you're also very lucky in a sense that you are early in your careers and you don't know everything that there is to know about your chosen career path. If you're seriously unsure, pick something that is a technical area of development. So say something, if you're a finance graduate, as an example, I understand that this type of role requires a significant amount of Excel knowledge. I believe my Excel skills are at this, this, and this. I do think I've got some ways to go to getting to where you are, but I do believe that the courses that I'm taking or the learnings that I'd get in your environment would help me develop that area in this regard. So if you find something that's technically inclined, something that you can learn, be taught on the job, self-learn, look at a manual, you're kind of sticking to safe ground, unless they're forcing you into asking a personality trait that could be, that you could then use Landry's technique, which is very valid.
Thanks, Geeta. We've got one more online. Tisa Singh, do you want to ask your question?
Good day. Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to ask about writing of a resume. Is it necessary to include the company that you are eager to work for? For example, if you want to work for maybe Netcare, is it necessary to change the job the professional summary in your resume if you want to apply for that company? I hope my question is clear.
Tisa Singh, let me maybe try to ask you if I understand. Are you asking whether a cover letter or summary on your CV is necessary?
Yes. How is it necessary, like, to include that you want to work for this company, like you are interested on it when you are writing a professional summary?
And this is on your CV?
Yes, on your CV.
Okay. So I personally I've not come across that where a candidate is specifically saying they have an interest in working for a specific company. I don't see how it would hurt. What I do think is important is that your CV is tailored to the opportunities you're going for. If you want to stretch it further and say, well, actually, this is the company I want to work for, or I don't know whether you were asking that you'd like to work for another company. And if that's the case, I would probably not put that I'd like to work for Geeta if I'm applying to Inspired, because people are very they have egos. However, in terms of that, I don't see how that would be an issue.
I would also like to pose the question, if you were sending me your CV and I am Netcare, I'm wanting to assume that you wanted to work for me, otherwise you wouldn't have sent your application. So I don't think it's necessary to tell me you want to work for me if you sent your CV to me. So maybe just think about that.
Thank you, Geeta and Landry. I think, thank you so much. I think we've come to the end of our session. We've just got about a minute left. So I want to thank you, Geeta. I want to thank you, Landry, very much for your time and for imparting all of this knowledge. And I know the students or the listeners have quite a bit more questions, and unfortunately, we are unable to answer all within the time. Thank you so much. And I wish you all well. Landry, Geeta, I'm not sure if you want to say anything, but before you do, I just want to advise members that the next webinar will be on the 20th of June. So just keep an eye out for the information that we'll send you on our webinars, whether online or in person. They will come through to you soon. Over to you, Landry and Geeta, if you have anything to add at this time.
Just thank you for your time. Thanks, Geeta. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Nishi, as well.
Pleasure.
I'm good, thanks. And I'd like to just say well done to the students that took the time to come here. it is you guys that are investing in yourselves for your own future. Your future selves are going to thank you. So well done to you guys.
Yes. Thank you all for making the time to attend. It's been a wonderful session, and I'm sure we'll see you in our upcoming sessions as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sweli. And the rest of you, go well. Have a safe afternoon.
Take
Cheers, guys.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
No problem.